And somehow in that conversation, I mentioned the word online, and he just like freaks out. He's like, online is the tree of knowledge of good and evil and this and that. And I'm like, wait, hold on. What, he's like, yeah, there's some horrible things that you see online. And I'm like, I try to explain, and I'm like, bro, if you're freaking out over nothing and you're making me even more suspicious, because like, what would you say if like a cop pulled you over? You don't even know what he's pulling you over for. Maybe he's just randomly pulling somebody over, and you start freaking out and saying like, oh no, I don't have a dead body in my car or something like that. Obviously he'd start to,
be like, I'm checking the trunk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, please don't check the trunk. There's nothing there. So I'm like, wait, like, to be honest, it's like any good institution, it's like if you say you're doing your own personal research, they should encourage that. And the fact that he did the complete opposite, I'm like, all right, now it's not just some like benign group. Now there's something they're trying to hide and everything like that.
Today I'm interviewing another member of the World Mission Society Church of God. This particular member has asked that I would not reveal his name, and so he will be referred to as Flagman, which is, I think, his YouTube name. And so this member is from New York City. He was a part of the World Mission Society Church of God for a few months. And I think he did a really good job that you'll hear of not really letting the WMSCOG push him around, I suppose. And he pushed back from day one, asked questions, did his research in spite of being told not to, and being warned about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and all that. And so his story is interesting. Again, he wasn't a long time member as many of those that we interview are. But I think he's a good example of how I think more people should respond when approached by the WMSCOG, or even members who are a part of the group and have been for a long time. I think there's something you can learn from how he related to the WMSCOG from day one, and how he thought critically about everything he was being taught and everything that the WMSCOG leadership was trying to get him to do. And he never just swallowed everything they were telling him to do without, thinking about it critically, asking questions, and making sure that what he was being told was the truth. So as always, if you can like and comment and share this video, and then subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined to do that. Also want to say thank you to those of you who have jumped on to the monthly Patreon recently. Really appreciate that. That's a huge help in helping me to continue to make videos like this. And so, with all that said, I hope you enjoy this interview. All right, well, today we have Flagman with us. That's obviously not his real name, but this is a former member of the WMSCOG who's asked for his name to remain anonymous. And so, Flagman, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being willing to share your story. And also, this is kind of doing something a little bit different today. I asked Kelsey just kind of probably an hour or two ago if she would be willing to come and help out with this interview. I've been doing a lot of these, and so I thought it might be fun to mix it up a little bit if Kelsey joined in and also has some questions from her own experience as a former WMSCOG member. And so, thank you both for joining, and Flagman, thanks for being willing to share your story.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, how long were you in the WMSCOG? And Kelsey, if at any point you have something pop up that you want to ask, just go ahead and interject.
Sure. So from, let's say, July of this past year to, let's say, October of this past year. Basically, you want me to get into the story of how I got in, or?
Yeah, go ahead and share. So you were in for a few months. So what was it that drew you into the group, and how did that all kind of take place?
Okay, so basically what happened was I was taking the bus, and somebody said she was kind of just mentioned, oh, you interested in any Bible studies or anything like that, and I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It can't hurt to learn something new, experience something a little different or whatever it is. She told me about the church, and I'm like, yeah, sure. She actually gave me a website, the WATV website, and in hindsight, I should have actually, did a little bit of research on that and did a little bit of research, outside. But I was like, yeah, sure. They seem, harmless enough, cool enough, and everything like that. So it was her and her brother. In any case, they were like, they have to do a certain number of studies to advance, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Seems, like a chance to learn something, experience something, whatever the case, whatever it might be or whatever it is. So, we go back and forth, and try to arrange a time, and I'm like, can we do it online? And they kind of like, oh, maybe better in person and everything. So I'm like, all right, let's figure out a time to do it in person. So I meet, and I go to the physical. This is the original, I guess, an actual church building and everything like that. And everybody seems whatever, kind of relatively nice, relatively normal, and everything like that. Now, the one thing actually the other thing, one quick thing to mention, she did give me the link to the main church website, watv.org or whatever it is. And in hindsight, I should have looked through that and looked through the did some other research on it. But I was like, you know what, let's try it out. Nothing bad could really happen and everything. And so when I get there and everything, there's actually a third person. Now, these two kids are, let's say 18 years old or so. And there's another one who actually is the one conducting the Bible study, who is, I don't know, let's say late 20s, give or take. And so the first one, if I recall correctly, was like, which day is the Sabbath day? Is it is it Saturday? Is it Sunday? Or is it like any day, as long as as long as it's the same day or whatever it is. So eventually they go through some verses, and the one thing that I'm like, honestly, I'd never did any kind of Bible study before. I'm like, wait, are you supposed to just randomly be like, jumping back and forth between verses and everything like that? Like, or I thought you're supposed to like read it as a book or whatever.
Yep.
So the next one is something like, get baptized as soon as possible. And they kind of, basically, the long story short was, they're like, yeah, the Spirit's name is the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, the Son is obviously Jesus. The name of the Father, I'm like, I don't know. I think I vaguely remember. I'm like, I don't know, what's his name? And they're like, Jehovah. And, which, later a little bit research and a little bit of, past, past religious knowledge. I'm like, wait, couldn't it be Adonai? Couldn't it be Yahweh? Couldn't it be like, aren't there a bunch of other names? And, but in any case, and then they're like, and the name of the Holy Spirit is Christ An Sang Hung. And I'm like, I don't know. Well, I guess if you were right about Jehovah, I guess you were right about, I don't know, I guess somewhere in there. So, and the one thing that, and again, it kind of shows the fear from the beginning, is that they're like, well, now that now you're like obligated to get baptized or whatever it is, because somebody on the other side of the planet or whatever it is who never heard of it, it's like, well, they're not really held accountable because they didn't know, but now I'm like,
right.
That seems kind of weird, because it's like, wait, just give you a little piece of knowledge and then just hold you accountable for so much over the little piece of knowledge doesn't really make sense. But whatever, that's how it goes. So
Yep.
we do some more studies. I think one was like the Savior of each age. One was I don't know. There's a few of them or whatever it is, but I think that they have like a list of 50 like official ones that that they go through. I know like number 49 is like the tithing one, which I never did, and thankfully they never managed to scam me out of any money or anything like that. But so we go through the thing, and I'm actually about to, at that moment I was going to go on vacation. So I go on vacation or whatever it is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot the next. So that was on a Friday. The next day I go in, and they're like, oh, you can come and visit. And obviously everybody knows they have they have the morning, the midday, and the afternoon, and the evening service. So I come in for the morning service, stop by, and they're like, okay, here's a new member and everything like that. So they do the whole we love you and everything. So I hang out there for a little bit. I do, I think, 1 or 2 more studies, then go home, then head out, for vacation or whatever it is, come back. And, they were kind of like nudging and pushing to try to, stay in contact during the vacation. And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, the point of vacation is to like relax and, minimal contact with people, from, that I know, and meet new people, experience new things. I'm not going to be, tied to my phone doing Bible studies during a vacation. That's not happening. So, I come back, and, they get back in touch, and they say like, oh, so how are you doing and everything like that. And keep in mind, I live on one side of the city. That church was on the other side of the city. I just happened to be like in that area for some other reason and everything like that. But, they were like, oh, you could come. And I'm like, I'm not coming in, that's too far to do on a consistent basis. That's not sustainable and everything like that. So, they find a house church that's nearby, and they put me in contact with the deacon over there. We kind of coordinate and everything. We do a couple more studies, and in the meantime, just keep in mind that the one of the first things I did when I went home, I'm like, who is this Ansang Hong guy and everything like that, or character? I don't even know if it's I was like, is it some language, that means Holy Spirit? Is it like, a title? Like, like Christ doesn't necessarily mean, like a last name. It's like, it's like a title that means like Savior or whatever it is, or, is, if he was a person, was he a good person, bad person? I don't want to be involved in anything, like a Jim Jones type of, where everybody commits suicide at the end, so I'm like, all right. So I do a quick bit of research and everything like that. And I'm like, all right, seems, fair enough and everything like that. So, we're going to the services and to the studies and everything like that. And, most of them tend to be on Tuesday and Saturday nights, because that's when everybody else is there. But the other thing is, I'm like, honestly, I don't feel comfortable praying in this new character's name or whatever it is. That I'm like, why exactly, I get that, they're kind of vaguely talking about it's because of prophecy, it's because of, a whole bunch of other things. And I'm like, you got to be kind of specific. And then they kind of like jump around with some Bible verses and everything. And, some of the things make sense. Like some of it is like, but not even from their perspective. Like the fact that the concept that there could be a God the Mother is like, all right, well, you hear about Mother Nature, Mother Earth. I'm like, I guess it's possible that, God could take a female form, but, I could take any form, I guess. Right. But, especially I'm like, all right, if we're going to be using a new name, let me be 100% sure that this is the right name to be using. And, I kind of, starting to get uncomfortable, and the fact that they're kind of beating around the bush, that they're like, yeah, we'll get to it when you're ready. I'm like, we'll get to it when you're ready. And so eventually what happens is that I give them a quick call, and I say, hey, look, I'm interested in and keep in mind, at this point I still don't know how to actually study the Bible. It's like I'm like, all right, I guess you're still supposed to do it, but by bouncing around between verses and trying to use them to support a thing. And I think they pointed out a part with from the book of Isaiah that says, well, the Bible itself says that it's a book of prophecy, and it says read this from the book of the Lord, not one of these will fail to pass. But and in hindsight, I look back at it and I'm like, because that's one of the things too, that it's like from jumping around. And one of the good things is that, I kind of got more interested. That I'm like, wait, you're having me read 2 lines. Hold on, let me read the whole story. This sounds kind of interesting. Right. No, we got to jump to Corinthians, and we got to jump to this one, and we got to jump to that one. But I go back and I read it, and I'm like, wait, this is a passage about some animals taking over some war, some land that's been destroyed or something like that. Now it's being taken over by animals. This isn't like a cross reference to the Bible itself. That doesn't, but yeah, in any case, so I call up and I'm like, look, I'm still generally interested in your studies, but just keep in mind, I don't feel comfortable associating as far as being part of your religion and everything like that. Like, I'm interested in learning it like academically, and somehow in that conversation I mentioned the word online, and he just like freaks out. He's like, online is the tree of knowledge of good and evil and this and that. And I'm like, wait, hold on. What, he's like, yeah, there's some horrible things that you see online. And I'm like, well, the only thing that I had heard that I had, was something about like some sex trafficking. But then I did a little bit of further research, and kind of the way it sounded like was like, all right, it sounded like they were doing some preaching at night, and they kind of weren't like overly aggressive or whatever it is, and like, come get baptized right this second. And the person kind of freaked out and thought it was that they were trying to kidnap her or whatever it is. But okay, that was a misunderstanding. But other than that, I didn't see or hear anything like horrible or whatever it is. So I try to explain, and I'm like, bro, if you're freaking out over nothing, and you're making me even more suspicious, because like, what would you say if like a cop pulled you over? You don't even know what he's pulling you over for. Maybe he's just randomly pulling somebody over, and you start freaking out and saying like, oh no, I don't have a dead body in my car or something like that. Obviously he'd start to
be like, I'm checking the trunk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, please don't check the trunk. There's nothing there. So I'm like, wait, like, to be honest, it's like any good institution, it's like, if you say you're doing your own personal research, they should encourage that. And the fact that he did the complete opposite, I'm like, all right, now it's not just some like benign group. Now there's something they're trying to hide and everything like that. Like, and keep in mind also, in the meantime, I was also honestly, a lot of atheist videos and things like that, and other Mike Winger and some of the more traditional, I guess for lack of a better term, Christian interpretations. And I'm like, all right, let me balance some interpretations. Let's get all the different ones. Let's see what everybody else thinks. And the Sabbath, okay, yeah, multiple people say that the Sabbath is Saturday. Okay, fine, that's legit. Other people, okay, they interpret it one way, some interpret it a different way. I mean, the whole thing about the baby goat and the mother's milk, there's like so many different, one is like, well, that means you need to keep kosher. One means that it's like, don't mix like fresh sounding truths with what's really supposed to be true. One means don't offer like a sacrifice of plants and mix in like your last year's thing. Don't take like the old stuff, mix it with you. There's so many different, and I'm like, all right, let me decide for myself what kind of seems the most reasonable and everything like that. But if you're like, nope, you need to take our own, and we're the only ones who do this, I'm like, all right, now you're just starting. So for one reason or another, I kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit of a pushover, whatever it is, but I'm like, all right, well, I'll do a couple more things, after calming him down and everything like that. So the next study, what he tries to do is he tries to begin the study trying to show a video of, well, first, all I saw was like a green, like a person and like a green thing. And I thought it was like, all right, tree of good and evil. I thought it was like, going to be like the snake talking to Adam and Eve. But it turns out it was like, some kid who's like, he does some research online, and then, he calls up and actually, to be honest, it felt literally right off that script that, the kid, sees some stuff online, and he calls up the pastor or whatever it is and says like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna attend because I see some stuff online. And the guy talks about how Jesus was considered a cult leader. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, is this the cartoon video, Kelsey, that he's referring to?
So I think this because I left 4 years ago, so this sounds kind of like it might be a newer video. It
might be an updated one.
Yeah, because like I know towards the end of my time there, they started to add more and more like animated videos to explain certain concepts. So this sounds very familiar to this video that they used to have called "Put on the Full Armor of God," where it's basically they say that again, the internet is a tree of knowledge of good and evil, but it sounds like this one is like they're applying it to like because that's what people do, is they'll go online, search the church, and then they'll say like to the person that they're keeping in contact with in the church, saying, hey, I don't want to study anymore because I saw this and this. So it just sounds like an updated video to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So was that the topic of it then? That was it basically their way of trying to scare you away from looking online anymore?
Pretty much, but it completely backfired, because I'm like, all right, now that you're so freaking out, now I see that you're actually trying to hide something, because I was looking online and I was, like I said, mixing. It inspired me to take, different points of view and mix, and just kind of absorb it and try to navigate my way and see what makes sense, what makes sense of this world, what makes sense of religion, what makes sense of what makes sense of everything. And long story short, yeah, I could actually send you the videos if you want, but what was I saying?
Oh, you have the videos?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all right, cool.
One thing I want to add too, because I think it's kind of funny, is that I've had people tell me that they hadn't even, the only reason that they came and searched Great Light Studios on YouTube is because the church told them not to. So
Really?
it's kind of ironic that the church says don't look online, or don't go on YouTube, because they're actually driving the people to do that. It makes them more suspicious, like you said, like what does the church have to hide that they're not they're so afraid of people going online and looking.
Exactly. And I'm like, yeah, like I said, up until that moment, I'm like, yeah, you're harmless, and going online was just a general thing that I was doing. But and not to mention, when they say go online, it's like, we use the internet for literally everything. They stream their Zoom services to the three things on every Saturday. They stream that to YouTube. They stream that to the thing. Obviously, the internet in general. What they mean is, don't use it to look about religion. Don't use it to look up the church. But again, the whole thing doesn't really make any sense. But yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, me, whatever. I'm like, all right, well, I'll still, I don't think I'm in any physical danger or whatever it is, so I'll still go back and finish the studies and everything like that, or continue with them. So the next one, and actually I'm kind of glad that I did, because it was like Daniel's prophecy, and basically they're like, all this, the beast with the 7 horns and this and that is the Catholic Church, basically, is how they say it and everything like that. And then the other thing that I was kind of keeping in the back of my mind, because by that point I'm strictly like robotic, academically trying to learn and trying to like avoid the whole spiritual part of it or whatever it is. But I'm like, yeah, this history book that they're using, it's like, I should be able to verify everything that they're saying, not just the religious part, but also the history part. And I kind of
when you mention a history book, did the book have a name?
Honestly, I don't remember. It probably did, but I don't remember, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was but it was basically, it was like, they would kind of flip back and forth to specific portions, kind of like how they do with the actual Bible, but they would kind of like, it would be like highlighted, and they would say like, this kingdom was the kingdom of gold, and this kingdom was the kingdom of silver, which in hindsight, I did some more research on that prophecy, and it's like, they're kind of thinking of where, the guy talks about Media Persia, but then all the other ones he can't name. So they're like, well, they say it was written before all this, but it seems like it was written sometime after Media Persia and sometime before, sometime before the rest of it, because he couldn't name Rome and couldn't name all those other empires.
Right.
But yeah,
that's
not to mention
what you bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention everything about gold and silver is like subjective. It's like, yeah, the future historians 2,000 years later call it, the kingdom of gold, kingdom of silver, but I don't know, were the people at that moment calling it the kingdom of gold and silver? I don't know. Yeah, and long story short, I found out later that, and again, a lot of the things that they say, we're the only one who does it, we're the only one who does it, we're the only one who does it. It's like, I think Matt Dillahunty or whatever it is, who's like a former Baptist who turned into an atheist, he's like, I was a Baptist and I thought that all Catholics were going to hell because that's what, Revelation Daniel said. And I'm like, all right, so you guys obviously aren't the only ones who think that way. And the whole thing about,
that's a good point that I actually haven't even ever thought to bring that up. But I think that's one of those assumptions, like that Christians don't keep Passover and that they're the only ones that keep Passover, but yet there's many other groups that keep Passover. And that's kind of another example that there's other groups that will, even within Christianity, that will look at Revelation and interpret it the same way in many cases that the WMSCOG does, and make some of those same applications. That I don't agree with much of how both of those groups would interpret it. But anyways, yeah, I think that's a good point that you kind of noticed that.
But one thing I want to point out too with that is that for like, because I was baptized around 2007, around 2007 to 2000, I would say about 10, they were very like adamant saying, the Passover was abolished in 325 AD. From that time until the time of An Sang Hong, Passover had not been kept. An Sang Hong, he was the only one who restored the Passover. They taught that until people within the church, someone had looked it up and saw, wait a minute, Herbert W. Armstrong from, another church, his church kept the Passover too, and before An Sang Hong. And so and then that's when they started changing their rhetoric that, oh, it's not just whoever brings the Passover first, it's that they have to bring it from Korea and it has to be brought from 1948, so that's when they started changing their doctrine a little bit. But, a lot of the WMSCOG teachings, not only Daniel, Revelation, but a lot of their teachings are highly leveraged from other churches. Seventh Adventist Church, Baptist Church, just their understanding of the Trinity and the modalistic view, that's hundreds of years old. So a lot of their teachings are not their own. The ones that are unique to them, actually, An Sang Hong never actually taught, the ones about Jerusalem Mother, Heavenly Family, Earthly Family. You're never going to see any of those sermons in any of his sermon books, in any of his truth books. You don't, because he didn't teach them. They either came from Kim Ju Chol or they came from Suin or somewhere completely different, but they didn't come from An Sang Hong. So their teachings are highly leveraged.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's everybody thinks that they're unique because you're living in your own glass house and everything like that, and it's you don't look out the window and see that there's other people doing the exact same thing, and you're not quite as special as, which makes sense because ultimately An Sang Hong was baptized into a Baptist church. A Seventh-day Adventist church,
right?
And so logically it would make sense that he would take some of the Seventh-day Adventist beliefs, and then if he's studying the Bible on his own, well, look, there's so many different interpretations that you mix and match, and yeah, eventually you're gonna get to a point where it's oh, nobody mixed and matched exactly the way I did, so I must have come up with something new. And if you convince enough people to believe you, then you have your own religion, which to me, that it's that's not even necessarily my problem with them, is that more so the whole secrecy thing and the whole hiding and the whole I don't know, some of the I'll put it this way. So a couple of months later and everything like that, I was what I was thinking about. I'm well, what? There's so many different interpretations. I don't know. I'm not going to judge whether their interpretation is right. I mean, I don't. Out of all the ways to interpret the Bible, I think that theirs is, looking into it not the right way. But I'm whatever. But at the same time, I'm all right, yeah, that whole thing about the internet being the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that annoys me. And then just some of the things that their tactics and everything to try to get you in are so. I'll put it this way. There was one time that I repeatedly said, I have an important test on this day. And, they would be well, are you coming? Are you coming this day? And I'm no, I already said no. And then even the day after the test and everything like that, they just kind of blindly texted me and they're so are you coming? We could pick you up. And I'm bro, I'm I don't know, 50 miles away and, just coming back from the thing. I'm going home and I'm going to sleep. No, I'm not going, And part of it too, it's I don't know, I think they kind of attempt to calibrate based on how much they think you've bought into it already. For me, some of the things that people say that they kind of convinced them, they never they never said oh, to me anyway, they never said, keep the Sabbath or you're going to hell, or keep this feast or keep that feast or you're going to hell. And I'm like, well, probably because for me, I'd be like, all right, well, looks like I'm going to hell because I'm not, that's it. I'm going to work and I'm not keeping this feast with you. Sorry, guys. But, I could picture, it wouldn't be so hard to imagine that, somebody who's kind of already shown themselves to be a little bit more committed, they kind of like jump in and, the whole tithing and everything thing, like, I could picture, are you tithing? Are you this? Are you that? With me, it's like knowing that I was busy and had enough other stuff and was kind of just doing this as a separate, whatever, spiritual investigation, whatever you want to call it. I think they kind of attempted to adjust it, but even some of the things that's like, and I told the other person that in the church, and I was telling them about my experience and everything like that, and I was like, whatever you guys believe, I'm not going to judge you for what you believe, but things like for example, I taught a lot of the members how to play chess, and it's one of the things that, hopefully, if any of them leave, it's like, well, no, keep the good stuff. If you learned how to play chess, you learn how to cook and everything, that's fine. Let's, be positive and everything like that. But, for example, they knew that I like chess and everything like that. So like, come here, we're going to, have some food. We're going to have a chessboard. And, they said the words, we're going to have a chessboard. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to bring my own. And then we get there and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, we don't have the chessboard. And I'm like, bro, you're so in a rush to get me to come. Literally all you have to do is say, bring your chessboard, and I'll bring the chessboard and we'll play chess, and, one of the other times that, they wanted to do a Bible study and they're like, oh, it's a secret. No, you'll love it. You'll love it. And that God the Mother thing with, that whole back and forth of Revelation and the bride and Galatians and this and that. Like I did that like 3 times. I did it once when I did it the first time. I did it a second time when they said, ooh, secretly we have this, you're going to like it. And then the third time it was again. And I'm like, guys, if you want me to advance in studying with you guys, you got to listen to me. And when I say, I want to know what study we're doing, it's for a reason. It's not that I'm trying to be a jerk or whatever it is. I want to know because we probably covered it already like that. And, in hindsight, a lot of the, some of it, it's like, yeah, whatever it is, I did learn about their theology, but some of it, it's like they have like 2 or 3 studies that are like the same thing back and forth about how important the Passover is. Like, yeah, I get it. The Passover is important, but, you don't have to have 2 or 3 separate lessons about it. Like, yeah, we get it. But, so yeah, I told him about all that. And actually, I'll give you a little bit of background about my name. I told him about a story that, I learned at work of. There was a railroad worker who was, they said, oh, the track is closed at 11 o'clock. And, his boss kind of told the crew the track is closed at 11 o'clock. So, or one of the tracks was closed. Some of the other tracks were still live and everything like that. So they're walking back and forth or whatever it is, setting up the flags so everybody can get in. And they see the work train go by. So the guy's like, okay, well, they said the track is closed at 11. The work train is here. All right, let's, and while crossing that track that he thought was closed, the track was actually live and a train came and killed him. And, that's the way that I told him. I'm like, you guys can't rush and force and pressure people and give out little tiny pieces of information and expect me to take everything as true. Like you give me a piece of information and I'm like, okay, is this true? And so as a result, is everything else true? And everything takes time. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm just going to rush through and assume that literally everything that you're saying is right. It's like, yeah, the part about the Sabbath. And again, that's one of their first lessons, because they want to show like, yeah, this is like legit. But, you have to do your own investigation. And if anybody's rushing you or discouraging you about any outside sources or anything like that, that's not good. And then I told him even, there was an investigation about, they're like, and that's one of the things too that kind of, rubbed me the wrong way is me I don't need the Bible to tell me that I'm pro-life. Like, to me, it's like, I just need to open up a biology textbook and know that, a fetus is basically the first stage of a human development and everything like that. But, basically both of them, the one in the house church and the one at the main church that I ended up, contacting, they're like, oh yeah, the Bible doesn't really say anything about that. And as a matter of fact, the Bible has some pretty nasty, stories about, killing pregnant women and dashing babies and against rocks and things like that. But then, there's also, they probably also ignore the parts that, the God doesn't like people who kill innocent lives and, shed innocent blood and things like that. But in any case, it reminds me of that story of, I think Diane Sims and Ron, the missionary or whatever it is, that are like, oh yeah, we were encouraging people to have abortions and everything like that. And I'm like, wow, of all the reasons to have an abortion, that's like way down, like that's like the dumbest reason I can think of, and that's one of the things that it's like, everything that you think that God is telling you to do, it's like, you have to think, is it actually God that's speaking, or is it voices in my head, or is it like the devil himself? Because they say even the devil can masquerade as an angel of light. Like, you think that you're preaching something that God wants, and then you're like, wait, hold on 1 second. Do you think that God, who loves his creation and loves us and doesn't want us to kill people and this and that, he would want me to kill my baby to preach some and then like that type of thing? It's like, you have to just think, and everything that you do, it's like, if they said, oh, kill this person because he doesn't believe or something, it's like, wait, hold on, he would want me to show love and kindness and respect and everything like that. Would he really want me to kill somebody or something, like, but yeah. And then so basically after that, I kind of saw that I wasn't going to get anywhere, and even trying to convince them to be less cult-like and everything like that, that's not going to work. So I'm like, all right, you know what, let's get this out there and everything. And it's not slander if it's true. It's not like
Right.
it's like, this is my experience. Like I said, there's good stuff, they that come out of it. They teach people how to cook. They, in my case, we taught people how to play chess and everything like that. You take out the good stuff out of it that you can. And, the stuff, if you don't want to be sexually immoral, and however you define sexually, okay, then if that's what inspired you to do that, then, good. But, all the bad stuff has to go. I mean, you can't just let those bad elements and those bad practices remain in the church. That's not good.
So what was it then? It sounds like you were probably quite a frustrating member for them to have around, and I would almost assume that maybe they had a sense of relief when you left, which I'm saying that as a compliment, because you sound like you didn't really let them manipulate you a whole lot, and
You stood up
you
for
didn't
yourself.
Yeah, which is great. And you didn't just immediately swallow everything they were telling you, which I think everybody can learn from. But what was it, though, that kind of made you go from still sort of giving it a chance to saying that you were just done with it and leaving?
So honestly, it was kind of taking a moment back to reflect on it, because what happened was that after that call where the guy said, oh, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, after that we had a couple more Bible studies, and one of them was like the Catholic Church one and everything like that. And after that, I just went on vacation, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna do a little bit more investigation, I'm gonna whatever. And when I came back, it's like, he was like, texting me, and after that, I wrote him an email, and I said, you know what, like, I thought about it, I relaxed, I thought about it, and, the way I phrased it was, I'm like, I'm suspending my Bible studies with you guys indefinitely. So, if you guys change your attitude and everything, maybe I'll come by and stop by. But until that happens, that's, and the other thing is too, even some of the, just some of the other lies and everything that they said, like, they're like, and it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to be generally vague and have a prophecy that's like generally vague, that's one thing. But if you want to talk like specific things, they're like, oh, well, Einstein was very religious. And then I look it up, and I'm like, Einstein literally wrote like a whole letter saying like the God of the Bible doesn't make any sense. And, I'm a humanist, and, I'm not really sure what. And then he's like, oh, and Stephen Hawking like literally said he was an atheist. So it's like, if you're going to say like smart people are Christian and smart people believe in God, that's one thing. But, if you want to say specific people and then that's wrong, and then you don't want me to go on the internet to look that up that it's wrong, then no, that's You know, so that was what I was done.
They even have a video in the church where they show examples of scientists who is actually a common like cult characteristic. That's something that a lot of cults do, is that they will like, you know, say like, oh, this scientist or this one, you know, they all believed in God to kind of legitimize that, you know, the kind of, I mean, I don't know if you ever sat through a subject called the Bible is fact in the church, but they use it to legitimize themselves. And so, but the church, the World Mission Society definitely has a video where they have like, I remember at least Einstein, I think Isaac Newton too, you know, and said that, oh, these people believed in God, and, you know, they were scientists. So science and the Bible goes together. So
I have to be honest and say that even as an evangelical Christian, you know, it's been a number of years, probably 10 or so now, but I would be taught similar things as that. And I would even have times where I would sort of use that as evidence, whether for myself or for other people. And so, yeah, they're not the only ones guilty of that sort of just bad argumentation or reasoning, but.
Yeah, and that was actually, and again, that's kind of where the atheist perspective comes in, that, you know, some of the things like, you know, they said, okay, we're going to use it. Yeah, I did actually sit through that lecture of, you know, the Bible is fact. And they said, what was it? And it's over. And actually, this is a good point, that their preferred method, their preferred Bible translation is the NIV. And, you know, I'm like, all right, well, I don't know, what's the difference between all these things? And I remember seeing some chart where they said like, okay, the King James Bible is like the more literal translation, and the NIV is like, it assumes that they probably meant this. So like in the book of Job, when they use the NIV, they say, oh, and God was sitting on the sphere of the earth. But, you know, I did a little bit of research and everything like that, and the literal translation of the Hebrew word, which by the way is one of the things I gotta start actually writing down, like, you know, what I learned and where I learned it from. You know, I started keeping notes, you know, a couple of days ago and everything of, you know, all the different sources and everything like that. But that basically says like in the book of Job, it talks about a circle. So it's like, well, could it mean like the projection of a circle, where it's like, if you know, a sphere, if you look at it from any angle, is a circle, but it could also literally mean a circle like a plate, or, you know, a frisbee or something like that. So okay, so that's ambiguous at best, and you can kind of, you know, that you could like kind of twist it up and everything like that. But, you know, the thing about, it mentions something about like there's fire inside the earth, but I don't know, didn't the ancient people have like volcanoes and everything like that? Like, so, you know, some of the, you know, and again, some of it, which is again, something that, you know, is not a unique teaching to them, but the way that they phrase it and everything like that. And this is another thing too, that when they're teaching you, and I don't know if any other groups do it too, but they'll kind of they'll do like, ooh, yes, brother, yes, that's the right biblical day that we can see is Saturday. Like, you know, I'm like, you can
you got the WMS accent down great.
Thank you.
They do have the accent, yeah. And they'll kind of set you up too.
Hey, real quick, I need to jump over to my work call, so I'll be back once that ends.
That's okay. Yeah, just go ahead and jump back in, and if we're still going,
okay,
then we'll let you in.
Cool.
All right.
Nice to meet you. If I don't see you again.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Right. So, sorry, were you saying something there that?
Oh yeah. Basically, you know, part of the manipulate, you know, was there that accent and everything like that of being all dramatic and everything.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like, you know, whatever your mission is, it's like you have to think. It's like, am I going about this in the most honest way? Because, you know, it's like, you know, you shouldn't be lying, and, you know, if you want somebody to believe it, it has to be a genuine belief. If you convince somebody, it should be that, you know, you're genuinely convincing them, not just kind of like, you know, lying by omission or, you know, things like that. Because actually that was one of the things too, that everybody, you know, we hear the word ansang hong, but I didn't actually realize until I went on that second vacation and everything like that, that they believe that God the Mother is an actual physical person. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I've been in here so long, and you guys never bothered to mention that you believe, which probably I would have left right on the spot if I had heard that, but that you believe that, Heavenly Mother is an actual person living in Korea. And, I'm like, wait, I shouldn't have to be this far in. I get maybe after 1 or 2 studies, but, I shouldn't be like this far in and be just finding out right now that some crazy belief and everything like that, and that's one of the things too, that it's like a lot of the things that they question kind of like, I'm like, yeah, that's a good question. It kind of had me evaluate everything like spiritually, as far as they're like, well, when Jesus came, he was considered a cult leader. And then, the Bible kind of doesn't really say that, that he was there and everything like that. So I'm like, all right, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's go figure out, if the Bible leads to Jesus. Let's go figure out if the Bible is actually true. Let's go investigate everything. Because now I'm like, it's like by trying to lead me in one direction, I'm like the bull that's like flipping out, and it's like, no, I'm going completely, my own way and everything, which is a good way, in a way that I'm happy with and everything like that. But, in hindsight, they try to coerce you into one particular way, and a lot of people, unfortunately, fall for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think it was then initially that drew you to this group? And I can't remember if you mentioned that specifically yet, but what were you in sort of a place of just wanting more to your spiritual life, or looking into that more, or was it just kind of out of the blue that you got involved in a church?
To be honest, it was like, it was out of the blue, to be honest. I was like, well, it's a new experience, and I haven't really had any real religious experience, so let's, give it a shot. Because the other thing is too, like I said, I was just thinking it was going to be a couple of studies, and, it ended up being something a lot more than that. But, I wasn't really looking. It just kind of popped up across, and I'm like, all right, let's see where this goes.
Yeah. So what was it then about the group that was making it compelling enough for you to continue to stay in, even in spite of it seems like you had red flags going off from the very beginning, and it seems like they didn't stop until you left. And so what was it that was still, in the midst of having those questions and concerns, still making you want to stay in?
I think part of it might have just been the community aspect, that it's like, well, to be honest, like I said, I kind of felt uncomfortable. Like most people probably, like the whole, we love you and the love bombing and everything like that. But honestly, that kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable. But I'm like, you know what? I live in a relatively isolated part of the city. And I'm like, well, I can hang out with some people and everything like that. Obviously, I have my own family and everything like that. But I'm like, it's a little bit more. I think that might have been more than anything, because honestly, after I left and everything like that, I'm like, all right, well, I can play chess with, my coworkers at work. I can hang out with people at work, and, figure it out and everything like that. But I think it was more just the sense of just having people to talk to and everything like that, more than anything. Okay.
So was your family aware of your involvement in the group, and what were their thoughts about it?
No, they weren't actually. Actually, it was only after the thing that I had told a couple of my I told some of my family members and everything like that, and I said, moral of the story, if anybody says the Bible the Bible makes it clear, the Bible doesn't make anything clear. So you know what you got to do? You got to, if you're interested in a study, read the Bible for yourself. Honestly, what I started to do is I started, I'm like, this is taking a little too long. I started reading like Spark Notes, like, that high school website and everything like that.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what? Let me read it by the book. Like, let me see, okay, the book of Genesis, what's that about? The book of Job, the book of this, and like read it as a story. And then I can go in and look at the individual lines and verses and see what they mean and everything like that. But honestly, there probably are some just standard, Christian, Bible studies that don't mean any harm or anything like that. But I'm like, you know what? Study it on your own, read it. You can go on, some, different, YouTube channels and everything with different interpretations and everything like that. Honestly, and that was one of the things too that, they were kind of insisting. And actually, that was one of the things that, that I had asked them, and they kind of like brushed around it. But I said, I'm like, look, honestly, a lot of my college classes, I learned more from like a 15-minute, YouTube video on differential equations than I did in, an hour and a half lecture on that particular, topic or whatever it is. Why don't you guys have those 50 lessons, have them, in a YouTube format and everything like that? Because they do have a YouTube channel, but it's like literally they just keep uploading their sermons, and there's like 5,000 videos and everything like that. And I'm like, just organize it. You got 50 lessons, put the 50 lessons in, and then, from there you can kind of link to other videos and everything like that. But they were like, well, and again, another thing that kind of annoyed me and everything, but they were like, well, it's like the secret recipe to Coca-Cola, and we don't want people to take it and manipulate it. And I'm like, if anything, if you make it public and say, no, this is our view, then at best you can, if somebody tries to say, no, this is, tries to like twist it up, you say, no, this is the video and this is the lesson that we teach. Like, don't twist up the lesson that we teach. This is the lesson that we teach. But, in hindsight, that's one of the things also that if you put it up, yeah, that's your official position, but then you can't change it, or it makes it harder to change it. So,
right. You're going to get called out on it if you do change it.
Exactly. And nowadays, now that everything can be, archived and everything, it's like, all right, from 2 years ago, even if you pull it down, somebody's probably going to find your old version and call you out on it. But yeah, no, I told him, I'm like, look, I wasn't, other than, occasionally hanging out with those people or whatever it is, nobody really saw any difference in my behavior or anything like that. But, I told him, I was like, look, the moral of the story, study the Bible on your own. If you want to go in, and now that you have your own solid position, because that's the other thing too, that it's like, they kind of take people that are newbies and kind of like form them into their position. But, if you have like a solid position, then, you can go in with an open debate, and, a lot of people don't change their mind and everything like that. But okay, this is your interpretation. Okay, well, I think this should be interpreted this way. Okay. And then you have a nice back and forth. And then you're actually learning, and maybe even convince them if you're solid enough in it. But, if you're a newbie and everything like that, just study it on your own, try to get some kind of foundation. And then if somebody wants to give you a study, then you take them up on that offer. But so it's one of those things that it's like, way back in college, I tested out the Amway, and it was the same thing, that it's like, I came across something, somebody kind of invited me. And the thing was that, they had like a money back guarantee. So at the end, actually, I took them up on that thing, and, I'm like, all right, give me my money back. But, the same way, I'm like, all right, this is what it is. I did the research. I did the math on Amway, and I'm like, all right, the only way I could make money is by scamming people. And I'm not, even if I do believe that I'm a master, con artist, I want to make an honest living and everything like that. So, okay, multi-level marketing, all that's like a, business, financial cult or whatever it is. This is a religious one. I don't know. Maybe there's a political cult or whatever it is, so I'm like, all right, let's, spread the word and not let people fall into these things. Cause the one thing that no cult member ever says is, hi, join my cult and everything like that. Like, that's the whole point, that, everybody's so isolated that, they don't even realize that they're in one until, you have to look at it from the outside.
Yes. So is that sort of why then you reached out wanting to share your story and wanting to come on, is just to kind of be another voice of warning and reason to tell people to watch out for this group? Was that kind of your motivation behind wanting to do this?
Exactly. Because like I said, it's like I even reached out to them, and I'm like, look, your beliefs, whatever you want to believe, you believe that. But, the fact that you're isolating everybody, the fact that you're discouraging people from, thinking for themselves and looking up their own things, that's not
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where kind of has this, do you feel like, impacted your overall perception of religion, or more specifically Christianity? And has it given you like a negative taste in your mouth for the whole thing, or kind of what are your thoughts about that having come out of this group?
Yeah, honestly, it did, because there's a saying that it's like the one way to make an atheist is to have a person just take the Bible and read it like a book and everything, which is kind of what I've been doing. But at the same time, it's like kind of I'm still open to the possibility of a God, and I'm open into is maybe Christianity is right, maybe Buddhism is right, maybe this one is right, maybe that one is right, maybe it's a mixture of the two or whatever, or of multiple religions, or all these things of near-death experiences. You have people, well, it might be a hallucination, and maybe if they were brain dead, the inside part, the EKG or whatever it is, detects the outside thing. Maybe maybe there is life after death, maybe there isn't. I don't know. I can't say what is or isn't, so I can't say definitively whether one group is right or wrong, or what portions are right or wrong. I mean, the one kind of crazy, call it, venting or crazy or whatever it is, but the whole thing about the Catholic Church, and that they believe that it's the devil making them worship the devil, and when they think that they're worshiping God. Maybe a lot of those Old Testament stories, it's like maybe it wasn't God that commanded them to do all this killing and this and that, because what would be the best way to make God look bad? If you do all this killing in his name, yeah, then God looks bad and everything like that. Maybe some parts of the Bible are true and some parts aren't, and so I'm kind of enjoying the process of exploring all that, and I'll figure out where I have to go from there and everything. But
yeah. So what would you say, and this will probably be my final question, and then I'll let you answer this and then share any final thoughts that you might have. What would you say to people that maybe are considering joining the World Mission Society Church of God, or to those that are still members in the group?
Well, I put it this way. Well, to people who are joining, I'd say I give them the same advice that I gave my family members and everything like that. That if anybody invites you for any kind of Bible study, read the Bible for yourself. Try to develop your own opinion, and then you can kind of work with it, and develop your own opinion from various sources and everything like that. Take little bits, and however you want to immerse yourself in it, you do that. So, and then if you want to come back and join it for the sake of community or whatever it is, then you could do that and everything. Or if you want to have a back and forth debate, one of those like apologetics where you always see like Mormon versus Christian, or Mormon versus Catholic, or Jehovah's Witness versus Catholic, and every if you want to do it like that, then you could do it like that. But honestly, don't let them take advantage of you being naive. You got to build your own knowledge up before you depend on somebody else to give you the knowledge of Scripture. But to anybody who's currently in there, I'd say, look, like all these questions that you're having, all I can say is that the internet is not the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Like if you have a question, and just go online and look it up. I mean, don't be afraid to take different points of view. And like I said, not everything necessarily might be right. Not even necessarily what you think or what I think might be right. Maybe there's another person who has like the right answer, or at least maybe an answer that might be satisfactory for that particular person, that like, okay, that makes sense. I think I could live with and understand that interpretation or whatever it is. But that's the real thing. Like their big problem is information control and trying to block you off from information, and that's one of the things that you can't let them do. So if you're listening to this and you have it, it's like, I'm not saying that they're the right group or the wrong group or whatever it is, but don't be afraid to do your own research. That's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of going back a little bit to before that, I think it's incredibly legitimate and makes sense that you would have a bad taste in your mouth for religion, or maybe more specifically Christianity, after being in a group like this. I do think, though, that in my experience, even being where I'm at with many questions and many concerns of my own, I still have seen a stark contrast between the World Mission Society Church of God, their just their methodology in how they evangelize, how they attempt to grow, and how they handle the Bible, and even just in their the character kind of that they walk out in response to the Bible. So I've seen a stark contrast between that and what I think are better, more rational, more even biblical ways of examining Christianity and interpreting what it's all about. And so, yeah, I think I just think this is something that can be a good push to do exactly what you're saying, to kind of try to figure some of it out on your own. And I think if the Bible is what it claims to be, then, and God is who the Bible says he is, then Jesus says, ask and you'll receive, seek and you'll find, knock and it will be open to you. And so that should be true. You shouldn't need an organization or a even a pastor or a leader to dictate everything that the Bible means and how you have to interpret it or not, at the expense of your salvation, as many of them will say. God and the Holy Spirit are capable of revealing and teaching on their own without needing somebody to tell you exactly what to believe and how to believe it. And so, yeah, I think this could be a good push to do, again, what you just said, to just kind of get a foundation for yourself. And I think that's super important, especially related to this. Oftentimes, the ones that they really get a hold of are people that just don't really have any history with the Bible on their own. They don't really have any personal understanding of it. And even when they might even want to, but even when approached by these people initially, a lot of those who don't have a prior knowledge of the Bible, rather than, going away from those initial conversations with members, rather than doing what I think they should do, which would be to go back home and kind of look into the Bible personally, examine it based on, context and history and all that, rather than just eating up what you've been told. I think many people don't do that, but that's hugely important to do. And I think would save a lot of people from getting wrapped up in this group and losing decades of their lives, which many people have, unfortunately. I think I hope more people will kind of have the obstinance that you seem to have from day one in this group, and just not immediately swallowing everything that was being told to you, asking questions, pushing back, not letting them just walk all over you. You maintained your autonomy, it sounds like, throughout most of your experience there, which is just great. And I think that's a great example of how, whether it's this group that you're being approached by or any group, that you should, walk that experience out. So, any final thoughts, any final things that you would want to share?
Not really too much. It's just, the other thing is too, that if you leave, or once you leave, make sure to take a step back and just evaluate everything, period. Don't be so upset at them that you just like, no, I don't want to never look at the Bible again. And, or the opposite, that, like one of the things, that it's like, you go to it, because one of the things is too that, they baptize you in the name of the wrong person and everything like that. So, don't go running around looking just for any baptism or any church that's like, okay, well, any church can be better than this, because, well, I don't know. There might be churches that are, that there probably are a lot of churches that are worse and everything like that. But, just kind of everything, take your time, the same thing, like I said with the story and everything like that, of, like when you're working around railroad tracks, everything has to be done precisely and carefully and methodically and everything like that. So, always make sure to, judge judge where you're at and decide what you need to do. Don't let other people, determine what the course of action is that you need to take. Ultimately, you're the one who needs to decide, what do I know? What don't I know? What do I think I need to learn? How should I go about doing this? That's the main thing.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, being willing to share and doing what you can, playing your part and helping hopefully bring other people out of the WMSCOG or preventing others from getting too entangled in it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful night.